Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Okay, great. So today, hello. Okay, so today what I wanted to talk about is some of the stuff that's going to happen in Ethereum over the next couple of years, but also talk about it from the point of view not just of like what's going to happen with the technology, but also from the point of view of like what does this actually mean for people who are building things on Ethereum. Well, probably the biggest news this year, right, is the merge is coming. So the merge is, so Ethereum switched to proof of stake. This effort that we have been working on for basically the last 8 years, right? So the first blog post that we wrote about proof of stake was back in January 2014. And in the years since then, a lot of research has happened. In 2017 to 2018, we converged on what we call the beacon chain today, the version of proof of stake that we ended up actually implementing. 1.5 years ago, the beacon chain was actually launched. And so pretty soon, what's going to happen is this complete switch where Ethereum finally switches over to being a pure proof of stake system. And basically what happens there is the Ethereum's application layer. So the applications, the smart contracts, balances, everything that is happening inside of Ethereum is going to be automatically moved off of the proof of work chain, which will basically just like stop being functional at that point and move over to the proof of stake chain, right? So after the merge, Ethereum will finally become a proof of stake system. Yay! Yay! So now, the merge is only the first step in this fairly long and complicated roadmap that we have, right? So after the merge, there's a bunch of other things that we plan on focusing on, but probably the biggest focus immediately after the merge is going to come on scalability, right? So scalability is also a problem that we've been talking about, we've been complaining about, we've been thinking about how to fix pretty much since the beginning of the Ethereum project and even before the chain launched all those years ago. And it's something where we've been actively thinking about it. There have been a lot of groups that have been actively developing solutions. And there's a lot that has happened over the last couple of years in the layer 2 space in particular, right? So some of the roll-up projects, so projects like Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, Loopring, Scroll, Starknet, this big long list of things exists now. And that's something that did not exist at all, 3 years ago. And it's just made a huge amount of progress over even the last year, right? But there's even more work on scalability left to go. So people who have been following the Ethereum core development process might have heard of Prototank Sharding. So this is one of the next big EIPs that is in the process of development and is coming to Ethereum after the merge. So basically, the goal of Prototank Sharding is to create what we call these data transactions that have these data blobs. And the point of this is to just increase the capacity of the Ethereum chain to hold a much larger amount of data, right? And there's this very nice synergy between these data blobs and layer 2 rollup projects because rollups are very good at scaling transactions, but they need some space to put their data. And expanding the blockchain's ability to hold more data so that these layer 2 rollup projects can use is exactly what Prototank Sharding is about, right? Now, Prototank Sharding, as you can tell from the name, it's only the first step, right? So after Prototank Sharding, there's going to be a second step, which is just called Dank Sharding. And Dank Sharding will massively increase the number of these data blobs that the chain can hold. So that's the long-term roadmap, right? The long-term roadmap is to basically increase the amount of data that the Ethereum chain can hold up to somewhere around 16 megabytes every slot, right? And today, the average block is only about 80 kilobytes. So like massively increasing the amount of data that the Ethereum chain can hold. And it's done over the next a couple of stages. Prototank sharding is the first stage, and even prototank sharding by itself is going to be a big improvement over how much data the Ethereum chain can hold today. Now, at the same time as improving how much data the Ethereum chain can hold, there's also another effort that's happening at the same time, which is improving how much data rollups use, right? So this is data compression in rollups. This is something that I've talked for a long time about as something that really needs to happen. Basically, trying to pack a much larger number of transactions into a much smaller amount of space, so that we just get a big scalability gain for free, right? We can pack more transactions without really having to spend more resources at all. So this is just this chart that I published about a week ago that kind of shows the different stages and how much you could do, right? So a transaction by itself, this is an ERC20 token transfer, takes about 188 bytes. And if you add different forms of compression, so taking out 0 bytes gets you down to 154 bytes, doing some signature aggregation takes you down to 128, making stateless compression even better, 75, and then even more advanced compression, that kind of where the decompression algorithm can look into the chain and look into the history, you can go all the way down to 23, right? So there's a lot of this work that's actually started to happen. So a couple of months ago, Optimism actually implemented a 0 byte compression. And ERC 4337 is also an effort that's been really picking up steam over the last couple of months, right? So a lot of effort to help the Ethereum chain hold a lot more data, and a lot of effort to help every individual transaction in a rollup use less data. So we're talking about Ethereum over the next couple of years being able to process a much larger amount of transactions than it has been able to before, right? So what do these two things mean for Ethereum, right? So these are not the only two technical upgrades that are happening to Ethereum, but there's probably the two most important ones, right? But what does this actually mean for Ethereum from the point of view of someone using it or someone building on it? So starting off with the merge, right? So the merge is going to happen first. So Ethereum's energy consumption will be reduced by more than 99.9%. Yay. So, yay. Yeah, so it's big improvements, obviously. In addition to this, there's a bunch of ways in which proof of stake improves security, and also the merge opens the door to more upgrades, right? So at the same time as being a switch from proof of work to proof of stake, it's also an opportunity to kind of take some of the ideas that we've learned over the last 8 years and use that to really redesign what the different parts of the Ethereum chain. So for example, the merge will also make Ethereum much more friendly to light clients, right? So today, if you want to access the Ethereum chain, most people generally use some wallet like MetaMask, and the way those wallets work is they talk to a server and to basically trust whatever answers the server gives them. So with light clients after the merge, once that tech is developed, you will be able to basically have a client that actually verifies the data that it gets back. So basically, the merge isn't just about the merge. The merge is also about other things down the line that the merge is going to enable. So that's the merge. Prototank sharding, so opens up more data space, transactions will become cheaper, and compression means the transactions get even cheaper again, right? Cheap, 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 yay. Yeah, no. And yeah, no, I mean, I know there's, inflation and 8.5% and gas prices are going up, but here, gas prices are going down. Right. So what can we do with a safer blockchain and cheaper transactions, right? I think this is probably the big question. So probably one of the big and really important things is just lower transaction fees are the thing and the only thing that can make blockchains affordable for anyone, right? So Median income per day in Canada, at least according to the data at this link here, is about $113. So this is all in US dollars, just to kind of put all the different countries in the same unit. In Poland, median income per day is $42. In Mongolia, it goes down to $16. And in Zambia, it goes down to $4, right? So very big differences. And we can compare against these numbers average transaction fees on Ethereum for the last couple of years. Now, obviously, they've gone up and down a lot, but generally they've been somewhere in between $1 and $20, right? Now, today, Ethereum transaction fees are fortunately a bit lower, but that's because we're in a bit of a bear market, at least relative to 2021. So that's obviously not something that we can count on, right? Like it's like basically if we see one of these bull cycles pop up again anytime soon, then even the cheap transaction fees that we see today, it's not going to happen, or fees are going to go crazy again, right? So that's on the Ethereum base layer, right? And if you take, let's say, the middle of that range, like we'll take about $5, then you can see how to a lot of Canadians, it can be affordable to send blockchain transactions for a lot of applications, but if we're talking about like blockchains being this global thing that's supposed to, empower people who are not empowered today in underprivileged countries, then you can see how it starts looking less viable, right? Because we're talking about single transactions potentially taking up people's entire daily income. And one of the things that you actually see if you visit some of these places, as we have, right, is that a lot of the time people do love blockchains, they do love cryptocurrency. I should say they love cryptocurrency, but they don't love blockchains. That's probably the way to put it, right? Because what you actually see often enough is that people have cryptocurrency, but they have it in Binance wallets, right? Like you even see, entire ecosystems where it's just accepted that everyone has a Binance wallet, and like sending from a Binance wallet to a Binance wallet is the way that you make transactions, right? So why does this happen? Well, obviously, right? If the blockchain is too expensive, people are going to look for something else. That's like just a fact, and it's a fact that we have to deal with. And so if we wants to have a world where like we can have blockchain activity happening without needing to trust centralized exchanges for everything, then we just have to learn how to make blockchains cheaper. Now, today with rollups, it's already sometimes 25 cents, sometimes less than 25 cents. And if you just like analyze what's going to happen as a result of the improvements to rollups that I mentioned in the future, then we're talking about potential fees of maybe 5 cents or maybe even as low as 0.2 cents. So massively cheaper transactions to the point where the on-chain transactions actually will become affordable for lots of people for whom they're not affordable today. Bringing back crypto payments. So this is an interesting idea, right? Basically, for those who here has been in the crypto space since at least 2013? Who here has read the Bitcoin white paper? Who here remembers the title of the Bitcoin white paper? Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, right? Like, back in the good old days, people thought blockchains were for paying people. So, yeah, right. So even like back in this picture, I'm curious, does anyone recognize which city and this is from? It's not Toronto. It is, I believe this is actually Berlin. This is the Bitcoin Keats. Basically, it's this is there was an effort in 2013 where people tried really hard to like get a lot of people to move to one place and to get a lot of restaurants like in the same region to all accept Bitcoin at the same time. And there was like this big social movement where people were really excited about like just trying to get an in-person Bitcoin economy happening, right? And it started and it continued for some time, but fast forward a few years later, and people have mostly kind of stopped about talking about these things, right? And I think one of the reasons why is basically because blockchains for in-person payments just stopped looking as attractive as it did before, right? And fees are just an obvious reason why, right? Back in 2013, one of the main arguments for why you should accept Bitcoin was fees, right? The argument basically was like, look, PayPal and the credit companies are very mean to us. They charge 29 cents plus 2.9% for transactions, and they charge even more if it's international. And so if you send a payment with Bitcoin, well, the transaction fees are 1 cent, right? And this was the argument, and this was like the pitch by which the first wave of merchant adoption happened. Now, since then, that argument has basically just become completely false. Now, if blockchains can scale, then guess what? The argument becomes true again. And so we're in a future where blockchains are cheap and we have even more network effects than we did before. So the question is, if we have much more scalable blockchains, can we actually bring back crypto payments? And I think it's something that's going to be worth trying, right? Now, crypto payments are something that exists in a lot of different ways, right? So there's crypto payments on the internet, right? Lots of people use cryptocurrency for international payments already. Like it's just something that happens quietly, and like people who do it, they just quietly do it. Like there's no reason for them to make a big marketing pitch and announce it, and so it is happening, but there are a lot of cases where more of it could be happening and it just isn't happening yet. So there's, but there's also kind of consumer to merchant payments, like paying for goods with businesses. There is also in-person payments, right? So in-person payments we tried to do, and I think it may be worth trying to do again. There are obviously micropayments. There's many different kinds of payments, right? But this is the sort of thing that like today is a fairly niche thing, but I think especially with blockchains being much more affordable, it is something that could grow much more in the future. Non-financial applications, right? So one of the big things about Ethereum is like, Ethereum is not just a payment system, right? And there's supposed to be this like big array of all of these other amazing things that you could use blockchains to do. So ENS is probably the big one. So who here has used a non-financial application on Ethereum that's not ENS? Who here has used ENS? Right, so ENS is like by far the most popular non-financial application on the Ethereum blockchain, right? And I think the reason why is pretty clear. It's just a really valuable and useful tool. And I think the interesting thing about ENS is that it's like one piece of a puzzle that where there are a couple of other pieces that are very complementary to it that can help to like actually create basically like some kind of decentralized identity ecosystem on top of Ethereum, right? So you have ENS, and ENS lets you have a username without that username being tied to a company that controls it. Account management, right? So let's say, who here remembers PGP? 1990s crypto wars, everyone has their own, public key, web of trust, right? There was this really big idealistic effort to try to kind of create this ecosystem where everyone would have their own cryptographic key. And with these, people would be able to sign messages, they'd be able to encrypt messages, we'd have privacy, we would have security, and like all without having to rely on intermediaries. But the network effects never really happened, and it just sort of never really panned out well, right? Now, fast forward to today. We have millions of people with crypto wallets, and we have millions of people that have private keys inside their own browsers. Now, why, right? Well, because they want to trade monkey pictures, right? So it's like, 1990s, you have these really kind of deep and philosophical arguments about like, there's this fundamental great battle between the authority of the nation state and the desire for individual freedom. And if you want to protect privacy and if you want to assert your independence, then cryptography is the future of ensuring freedom of the humanity. Fast forward 20 years and it's like, hey, look, it's a monkey. And guess which one works better? So now, so this is like in one of the kind of interesting double-edged swords of the crypto space, right? It's like the problem with the pre-crypto sort of idealistic decentralized tech movement is that it never had enough incentives. The problem with the crypto space is that like it has great incentives, but at the same time, it has incentives that like go in very weird directions sometimes, right? So at the same time, though, like we have actually created this ecosystem where lots of people have cryptographic keys, and we actually get the possibility of using these cryptographic keys for other applications and not just stuff on the blockchain. So there's this project called SignIn with Ethereum, where you can use your Ethereum wallet as a way to sign into web services. So if you go to chat.blockscan.com, you actually see there's like a chat application. It's basically like a Telegram clone, except you don't have to give your phone number to use it. You just like use your phone, use your sign in with your Ethereum account. And if you, like anyone who has an Ethereum address basically already has a chat.blockscan.com account. And if you know someone's DNS, then you can go send them a message. I mean, you can send me a message. I probably won't read it, but you can send me a message. Now, so I think sign in with Ethereum is like one of those things that kind of expects to start slowly growing more and more over time, right? Now, one of the problems though is that if you just use cryptographic keys as your wallet, as your account, then like what happens if your key gets stolen? What happens if you lose your key? What happens if like any kind of accident happens? Now, one of the kind of pitches that sometimes traditional Web2 companies argue about, like, why Google can control your account and why it's good, is because they can do account recovery, right? It's like, if you lose your account or if something bad happens, there's like people and you can appeal to those people and those people can give you your account back. Now, like my personal experience with this argument is that it's like somehow actually not true, right? Like I've personally talked to people who've had like trouble with their accounts with a lot of these Web2 services, and they just often they just can't get their problem fixed. Like they reach out to support, and they just like get stuck. I mean, like I personally, a few months ago, like I had my Amazon accounts flags due to like some suspicious activity thing because I dare travel between different countries. Then there was a form and I filled in the form, and at some point they said, okay, well, we filled in the form, but we don't have enough information, and please hold on. And like basically I have not gotten my Amazon account back, right? So Web2 companies are like, they talk about how centralization is good because you at least provides recovery, but like somehow they've screwed this up so much that often they don't actually provide recovery. So what can we do? So Web3 can do this better, right? So for the last couple of years, I've been talking about this concept of social recovery, where like you can choose, who your recovery contacts are, right? And like you can make whatever choices you want. So you can say, I'm going to have 5 recovery contacts. 2 of them are going to be an institution. 1 of them can be my employer. 1 of them can be my dad. 1 of them can be a friend. And any 3 of those 5 can come together and recover your accounts and kind of reset your key to something else, right? And this is something that you can put into the rules on a smart contract, put that on chain. So this is, it's a very simple approach, and it's, I think, a sort of a model of security that is like both very decentralized, right? Like you're not giving up your control to any one single person. And it relies on forms of trust that people have and that people are good at, right? Like I think people, and especially less technical normal people, are going to be better at picking seven friends that they trust, and they are going to be at like writing down 24 words and making sure they write it down correctly, and making sure this weird piece of paper is like they're going to be able to keep it for 10 years and not lose it or get it stolen ever. But so it's like actually a great solution, but implementing it correctly requires smart contract wallets. So fortunately, smart contract wallets are actually coming. Now, interestingly enough, smart contract wallets themselves, so like actually being able to track like when these account recoveries happen, when these key changes happen, this itself requires a blockchain, right? So it's like, instead of using your accounts to log into stuff or using your kind of off-chain accounts to interact with stuff on the blockchain, it's like, no, you're using your account, which is on the blockchain, to sign into services that can themselves also be centralized services that live on off-chain, right? So you can use the same account to sign into on-chain stuff and off-chain stuff. So that's the second piece of the puzzle. Third piece of the puzzle, attestations, right? So, it would be nice, for example, if you can prove that your account actually is a human and that it's not a bot, right? So this is something that, like, for example, in the context of social media, a lot of people care about, right? So, if you want to improve the quality of social media and like reduce the level of terrible stuff without kind of, trying to impose specific political opinions or like control it in particular directions or whatever. One very simple thing that you could do is just make sure that, the people who are posting actually are people instead of being like some fake, kind of farm where you have one person controlling 5,000 accounts through a bot, right? But if you want to do this, then like you have to be able to actually tell, who the real humans are and who the bots are. Now, fortunately, on-chain attestations can actually help, right? So like if you use your Ethereum account to sign into a service, the service can actually go and inspect, like, first of all, has this account ever sent a transaction, right? Sending a transaction requires paying a transaction fee. So just whether or not you send a transaction is like the simplest possible filter that makes it hard to create 10,000 fake accounts, just by making it really expensive. Step two, you can look at like things that account has done. You can check for a proof of humanity profile. You can check for like a pope. It's a token that proves that you attended some particular event, right? There's like a lot of different things that you can check for. And once you do that, then you can get some kind of like better indication of like, well, how likely is it that this account actually is a unique person? Now, this is something that we can improve over time. So we can combine it with, fancy zero knowledge stuff, and we can improve privacy. And you can do really fancy and cool stuff like prove you're a human without revealing which human you are, right? So we can have kind of privacy and better security at the same time. Now, these are all different kind of pieces that really fit into each other, right? So you want to have an account in order to sign into services and interact with services. Now, with that, you want your accounts to have a name. If you want to have a name, ENS is great for that. If you have an account, you want to be able to like manage that account, be able to change the key, do security stuff, on-chain smart contract wallets, and you want to prove things about yourself, on-chain attestations, or off-chain attestations could kind of with proofs attached could work as well, right? So all of these pieces really fit together into this kind of Ethereum identity ecosystem. And like, to me, this is probably like the best candidate for sort of Ethereum's second major app, aside from the DeFi ecosystem. So that's non-financial applications. DAOs, I think, are also interesting, right? And DAOs, I think we've seen a lot of like big DAOs, but we can also see a lot, like we could see more micro scale DAOs, just like 5 or 10 friends coming together for some amount of time and pooling a few $1,000s together for some community activities. So things that are kind of a little bit too simple to create an entire corporation around, but where you still want to, have the money be on chain and like have some to kind of make decisions together and have some transparency. So all of these things could be done on chain, right? But making it viable and making people want to do these things on chain requires the chain to be much more affordable. There's enterprise blockchain use cases as well, right? So people have been talking about enterprise blockchain use cases for years. And I think in this case, like we don't actually need like fancy, roll-ups and Prototank Sharding for this. There's a structure called a Validium that people that have been looking into and building more and more. Basically, it's like you do things in a server, and you kind of execute things in a centralized way, but then you use cryptographic proofs, so like zk snarks, and you publish them on chain. And that way you have a regular record that basically proves that the changes that are happening are changes that actually are following the rules. And because you're publishing on chain, you can prove that you're not like giving different evidence to different people, and you can prove that the system isn't like reverting anything and it's not moving backwards, right? So this is also technology that is rapidly improving. It's rapidly improved a lot over the last 2 years. And especially, I think, with some of the ZK EVM stuff that's happening, it's going to improve even further. So I think these are like some of the consequences that are going to happen from the technical improvements that are happening in Ethereum over the next couple of years, right? But there are other technical improvements. So the Ethereum chain might in the future become not just cheaper, but also faster. Instead of including your transaction after half a minute, we might be able to provide confirmations after some shorter period of time. What kinds of things will that make easier? What about improvements to privacy, right? Well, like what can we do more of if Ethereum becomes a more privacy preserving system? What will better middleware unlock, right? So if people build applications, are there applications that other applications can talk to where if you make one application good, that itself opens space for even more applications? I mean, I don't know, but I think these are all questions worth thinking about, right? So yeah, this is basically what I want, what I hope that we can start thinking about more, right? The technical improvements are happening and they're going to happen, but like what kinds of improvements in terms of what we use Ethereum for are these things going to make possible? Thank you.